All right, well, thanks again for attending today's session, exploring the latest innovations in ACI 6.x. I will actually start off with a poll. And actually, Joey, can you see the opening poll?
Yep, kicking it off right now.
Great,
Yep.
thank you.
Mhm.
All right, so the session is being recorded. It'll be sent out in a couple days. We'll be using Slido for polling and Q&A. If you have any questions, please ask in Slido. I've got 3 colleagues on the call today that can help and address your questions. And we do have a poll that Joey just kicked off. So if you can fill that out, that'd be great. So we'll open up with the new ACI release cadence, talk about the changes that we've done there, and then we'll discuss some of the main features in 6.0, as well as demoing some of them. Then we'll talk about some of the new 6.1 features and demoing a few of those. We have a lot of exciting content here. We have a lot of demos during the session. So due to the time, the demos won't be completely extensive, but you'll get to preview some of the new features in action and hopefully get interested in leveraging some of these new features to address your use cases. Then we'll close with some important details on the ACI upgrade around enhancements and best practices that hopefully will provide you with more confidence when preparing as well as performing your upgrades. So again, I have this poll.
So I kicked off that one. We got plenty of responses, or we got a good amount of responses. Do you want to open up the other one as well?
Not yet. That'll
Okay.
be, yeah, close.
My bad.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
So we'll talk about the release cadence first. Starting from 6.0, we changed our release cadence as well as our strategy. So you guys may have known that we had a short-lived and long-lived releases, but now we're looking at recommended releases post the initial feature releases in each given train. So this 4-month life cycle is divided into, well, it's 18-month life cycle is divided into 4-month life cycles, and it has various focuses. So initially, so in the first maybe 1 to 4 or 1 to 3 life cycles is the development phase. So that development cycle contains new features, and they'll have an F at the end to indicate that it's a feature release. This is usually, like I said, the first 3 to 4 releases. And then we'll have a maintenance cycle. So there won't be any features introduced in those maintenance releases, but we'll only be focusing on bug fixes and PCERT fixes. And that will have an M at the end. PCERT support only focus will be also will be resolved in the next release train. So any new defect releases as well as the PCERT. And then the last 6 months is just tax support. So these will be done in that last 6 months. So here's a release timeline starting from Q1 calendar year 2023. As you see, we have from release 5.2 plus as the previous releases are outside of these cycles. So we don't have the long-lived label anymore. The major release actually enters the maintenance release introduction phase after those first features are done. And then after that, we have the maintenance phase, as I mentioned, around Sev 1, Sev 2 defects and PCERT. And we have these gold star, so recommended releases. You'll see that for each release train. And you'll see the last one for 6.0 is 6.07 EM. So let's get into some of the ACI 6.0 features. We have, there we go, sorry. The virtual APIC, so we're actually allowing, we're being able to fully virtualize the APIC cluster. This is not to be confused with the mini APIC. This basically can do everything that a physical APIC can do. And in the 6.0 release, there is a smaller scale. We'll talk about 6.1 a little later. We also have the Nutanix integration, which is very similar to VMware vCenter. We've noticed that many more customers are looking at Nutanix, so we have a partnership with that, as well as on the compute side. We also have Nexus Dashboard Connectivity Analysis. This allows you to troubleshoot between two different endpoints, or source and destination. This actually came out on the Switch 6.0.2 and 16.02 switch code. We also have the multi-site PBR with VZ-ANY. I'll get into more details on that when we go through each of these. So the Nexus Dashboard Connectivity Analysis allows you to look at both the control plane and the data plane. So imagine there's a call about access between an endpoint and a server, and that's broken. There aren't any flows being done. There aren't any flows, so we can look into this connectivity analysis that is supported up for specifically for ACI. And it'll trace all the possible forwarding paths between that source and that destination. And this is leveraging the control plane information from the fabric. And we have ELAM as well as part of this that's used to analyze the data plane for all forwarding decisions for the source and the destination that's put in. And if there's multiple paths between those source and destination, then you'll see the multiple paths, and the green line will indicate the path that's actually taking. So let me go into the demo. All right. So we'll look at one that was already ran for the sake of time. So you could see here that there's this source and this destination that was entered. And we had plugged that in, and you could see the different connectivity, the different paths that are in here. And as I mentioned, the green indicates the path that was taken. So you can see that the traffic between these two endpoints are going over this path. And this really helps with, like I mentioned, connectivity problems. You could go and see specifically what path it's taking and maybe what where it's broken, or you might be wanting the traffic to go into a different path.
Hey, Larissa, do one thing too. Click on the one of the switches there. Just want to highlight the if you go to the details or the analysis details. I just want to highlight the ELAM support. So it's not just based on control plane to build a topology, but we also validate exactly how the packet is traversing and on which interfaces and on which EPGs, etc. By running a hardware capture on the data plane. So if they're in that data plane tab, you get full ELAM visibility from what the ASIC is actually seeing. And this is equivalent to running an ELAM either manually or with TAC or the application that's delivered natively. So it's kind of porting over that same type of functionality from the ELAM Assistant application into Nexus Dashboard, and also doing some further validation with some of the data that's stored in the platform.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we have various APIC deployment models now. So this is providing you with flexibility with deploying your APICs, not just on-prem. So we have remote APIC cluster that actually was introduced in 5.2, and in 6.0.2, we introduced the virtual APIC cluster. And now we have a cloud-hosted APIC cluster. So this is only supported on AWS, but this allows you to leverage the cloud to deploy where you can connect remotely via L3 network to your on-prem fabric. So in this release, we're able to manage fabrics up to 200 leaves. And this is supported on ESXi as well as AWS EC2. And this can be connected directly connected to the fabric if using ESXi or remotely attached over L3 deployed in AWS, as well as even ESXi. We don't support mixed clusters and vMotion isn't supported, but this is in this specific release. So now we support, like I mentioned, the L3 remotely attached. That is new, as well as with ESXi directly attached via L2. So we also introduced ACI Nutanix integration, as I mentioned previously. We find a lot of customers are starting to leverage Nutanix, and we have the VMware vCenter integration already. And so now we're able to integrate with the hypervisor leveraging Nutanix. So we don't support microsegmentation yet because Nutanix doesn't yet support private VLANs, and that's what ACI uses for ESGs. But we do support this integration with the hypervisor. So let's go into a demo. Just make sure I didn't get logged out. So this is Nutanix Prism Central, and you can see the hypervisor that we have here, and you can see there's this single host, and then we have 6 VMs that are connected to that hypervisor. If we go into networks, you can see the vSwitch. You can see this is similar to the vSwitch in with VMware. So you can see this is what's integrated or what's created after the integration with ACI. And you can see the various subnets that have been deployed and if there's any internal interfaces. So on APIC, on virtual networking, you can see all the different integrations that we support. With Nutanix, you get all that visibility just like we do with VMware. We can see what AEP or Access Entity Profile has been deployed. We can see the hypervisors that have been integrated, any of the virtual machines that have been deployed, that virtual switch that ends up getting created with this integration. And then you can see the various EPGs that we have attached to this integration. So we've also introduced weight-based symmetric policy-based routing. So traditionally, with symmetric PBR or policy-based routing, APIC will load balance all the traffic to the different destinations that you provide. And this is done in an equal number of flow fashion. But now in 6.0.1, you can send traffic to a certain destination based on the traffic amount. So instead of having this equally divided, you can have these different buckets, and then you have different percentage of traffic going to each of those destinations. So a use case for this is maybe you have a firewall in one location that is a little more powerful than other firewalls. So you want that firewall to handle more of the traffic. Maybe you're bringing a new firewall in and you want to send minimal traffic to that new firewall just to make sure everything, the routing, all the configuration is working. So you provide a weight for each of the destinations, and then APIC adds the weights up and then calculates the total number of buckets. In this example, we have 10 buckets, but they're all divided determining on the percentage that you specify for each. So we also introduced the support of doing VZ-ANY with policy-based routing in multi-site. So we hadn't supported that in multi-site previously, but we had many customers that had different security policies on their firewalls that they wanted to send all the traffic to their firewall to perform their specific traffic security policy. So now we're able to do this with VZ-ANY to VZ-ANY PBR or L3 out to L3 out PBR traffic, and that can be sent to the firewall. This does require Indio 3.0 or 4.2.3, as well as 6.0.4 ACI. Here are all the specific use cases that are now supported. We have the VZ-ANY to VZ-ANY intra VRF, VZ-ANY to EPG intra VRF, VZ-ANY to L3 out intra VRF, and L3 out to L3 out intra VRF and inter VRF. So with the to expand on the multi-site PBR with VZ-ANY, when you're deploying this, you can see, like in this example, we have we're sending the traffic from site 1 to site 2 and sending it through those firewalls. So we have the traffic coming from the site and it's traversing through both the firewalls. So if the traffic was reverse, it would still traverse both the firewalls at each site. So this addresses the previous issues with asymmetric traffic, since the sessions will be established on all of the firewalls. The goal of this is to redirect this to your firewall service and redirect all of your inter-EPG's traffic in the VRF, whether it's north, south, or east or west. The support now is only for a single service node insertion in Indio 4.2.3 and 6.0.4. And we also support layer 3 out SPI stretch across remote leaves. Some of the use cases here is a cloud native network function being deployed or containerized workloads in your edge, as well as some telco cases like packet core. Another enhancement that we made in 6.0.2 is improving and simplifying the way to configure interfaces. If you guys have been an ACI user for a while, then you'll understand that there were multiple steps. So there was a 4-step process in configuring your switch profile, and the selector, your interface profile, the interface selectors, but now you can do all this in a single step. So the port and the APIC will configure everything under the hood. So the APIC is taking your port configuration and then rendering it to all the applicable policies. You'll be able to view the policies for each interface. However, you won't be able to actually modify it there. You have to modify it in the port configuration. This is an optional. It's not done by default. It's targeted for people who are more beginning with ACI. So if you guys are familiar with the process, you're comfortable with the process, you don't need to change to this method. And actually we can't go back and forth, but you could see already what the configuration is when this method is applied as well as previously. So it's not recommended for brownfield, but we do support the migration for this. And like I said, it's not backwards compatibility. So you'll actually have to remove the policy and then create it again. So again, this is not default. You can leverage this if you think it's easier, or if you maybe are new to it and would like to try it, you can evaluate it based on your needs. And all of the objects are also created here. So let me go to the demo. Actually, it's not good. So you can configure an interface here, select the node type, port type, interface type, then select the node or nodes, and then the interface or interfaces that you'd like to apply this to, and then select the port policy group. So this, as you can see, this whole flow is much quicker and easier than it was previously.
And then under the hood, Larissa, if you just want to go back quickly, just to show, because if we make a comparison to how we did things before, we had leaf profiles and interface profiles that we would create that would be a one-to-one mapping for the switches and also the VPC domains that existed. So if you look on the left, the profile that gets created under the leaf is a system-generated profile. And then it still uses the best practices that we would lay out. So every individual port on that leaf, for example, would just have its own access port selector that gets associated to that. So it doesn't clutter the system. It actually uses the best practices that we would have documented before. We just automate it with some names. And so the same thing applies for the switch profiles. They get mapped back according to the right interface profiles. There's also one other thing I wanted to call out as well, is that there's actually a new API endpoint for this, which is handy. So if you were to browse the API inspector and look at the config that's getting pushed during that workflow, you'll notice there is a different object class that we create to aggregate this data, and that can be tied into automation and stuff too that you guys might have as well. So we cleaned up not just the UI, we actually cleaned up the backend too a little bit to consolidate this.
Great, thank you, Joey. All right, so let's move into.
We can still see the demo screen. Sorry, just gotta click on the PowerPoint.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, can you see it now?
Yep.
Great, thank you. So some of the top 5 features in ACI 6.1 include one fabric, where we're bringing in our NDFC, all of our fabrics into a single dashboard where we can configure. This is also being done with the help of the ACI border gateway. So we'll have a seamless extension of virtual routing and forwarding instance, as well as bridge domains between 2 different fabrics. The Cisco ACI border gateway is a node that interacts with the nodes within the site and with the nodes at external sites. So this border gateway will be able to communicate between both ACI and EVPN. So the EVPN communicates the L3 out prefixes between the sites, and then whatever is learned by the border gateways is then shared. We have Nexus Dashboard Traffic Analytics. This is an improvement, an enhancement on our previous NetFlow and flow telemetry that was supported. We also have the virtual APIC physical to virtual migration, as well as some enhancements or larger scale for our virtual APICs, and then the common policy. And common policy is around integrating other Cisco products to have that to have policy at between different a common policy between different domains. So the One Fabric experience, like I said, is we'll have Nexus Dashboard as a single point of control for your different fabrics. We'll be able to manage the ACI fabric as well as the NXOS VXLAN fabric, deploying those border gateways so we get that translation and communication to maintain that common policy between the two different fabrics. So this is around your ACI, this is around NXOX, VXLAN, EVPN, or your classic LAN fabric. It's centralized for all of the management and integration, being able to manage your L4 to L7 devices, your VM workloads, as well as doing any redirects for L4 to L service inspection. So to get into traffic analytics, we have had multiple iterations of flow features. So we initially started with NetFlow, and then we introduced flow telemetry. And flow telemetry allowed us to have full path visibility and stitching, as well as packet drop isolation and explanation. But what this was doing with flow telemetry is all of this data is being exported by the Nexus 9Ks. So they're limited the number of flows per second that can be viewed across clusters. So we have introduced traffic analytics for ACI that it's more of a hybrid approach, leveraging the hardware innovation and leveraging NetFlow version 9 that allows us to have much more visibility into all the different traffic details. So how this is done is we have service endpoints that identify what type of traffic is being sent, and then we have scoring. So we score the traffic, how the traffic is running to determine if there's issues, if there's some packet loss, some congestion, and that allows you to have that visibility so you can go in and see what is actually going on. We're able to look at the different endpoints and see what service they're providing, which would be like a port based. So maybe port 80 or something like that. And then this also aggregates all this information and it delegates it to the switch. So what it ends up doing is we're able to support more flows, and it's less work on the actual switches. So it helps with performance. We're able to see the congestion, latency, and drops. We can have different customized categories. We could detect potential issues and see top talkers. The service categories are auto-discovered. However, you can create your own ones. And let me go to the demo now. All right. So you see we have, where am I going? I'm in the wrong spot, sorry. Let me go to, okay, go directly to service analytics. So, traffic analytics. So you could see the different metrics here. We have latency, congestion, and drops. And you'll see on the dashboard here where we can show you what the health status is for those. So right now, we don't have any issues with latency, congestion, but we do have some drops. So if we scroll down here, you could see the scores here by the service category. And that service endpoint category is what I mentioned earlier about the different ports. So you can create your own, leverage these different categories. And then we'll go down here. So you can see that this graph is by default by a score. And it's showing that here that, let's click on this guy, that you could see there's buffer drops that have created that score. You could go into trends, you can collect a specific flow if you would like. You can see this by different categories. You can look at the TX rate, receiving rate, etc. So this provides more visibility and also leverages less resources to give you the mappings and give you the categories and give you those details in the congestion and latency as well as drops. Okay, so in helping to reduce the footprint of your Cisco ACI fabric, we have previously introduced the virtual APIC cluster, but now we have two more PIDs. One is the VMware S1, and then the other one's the VMware L1, that's either for ESXi or for AWS. And we now have 3 different scale support. So we have, and these match up, these pair with the physical support. So the physical scale match up to these. So we're able to support now medium and large, actually, I'm sorry, small and large. We're supporting medium in the 6.0 release, but we now have a form factor for both small and large. And we're able to use a single image for this. Another thing that we have introduced is the common policy. So I had mentioned that this allows us to have a common policy around different domains. So in this, ICE actually serves as the exchange hub, sharing all the context about the users, devices, and applications across all the different controllers across the different domains. So we're able to have a consistent policy, well, a consistent way of identifying this, and then have a consistent policy crossing those different domains. There are a lot of different policy models within Cisco, so this is a phased approach. But the first step is really exchanging that context. So understanding what the SGT is, what the EPG is, what the ESG is, and communicating and sharing that information. So this is actually done between ICE and APIC in this release. And we do support multi-tenancy, multiple L3 outs, but the communication is done via REST API and PX Grid between ICE and APIC. So you integrate the two, and then there's a connection that's established over the API, and then that information is shared. The EPG, ESG information is shared from APIC to ICE, and the SGT information is shared from ICE to APIC. And there's 2 different ways of being able to leverage this. You can either enforce it in the data center from the SGT and traffic that's coming from your campus into the data center, or you can enforce this in the campus. So just depending on how you want to create your policies, whether you want to create them in the data center or in campus. Maybe you have certain use cases where you need to enforce them in one of those in a certain domain. This isn't really part of the demo. All right, so let's go into sec here. So you can see TrustSec has been enabled on this ICE, and that's what's providing those SGTs. We have our two device SXP devices where we can push and enforce the policies as well as within the encapsulation. You can see the SGT bindings. So these are the SGTs that have been assigned to these different IP addresses, and where we've integrated or mapped the EPG. So let's. So you can see here if it's learned from ACI, then you'll see that here, and then you can see that it's been mapped here. There are various things you can do. You can change. There's different names that you can use here. You could append the application. You could append the tenant or the VRF, just so you understand exactly what the group is. So this is the first of this iteration. All right. So the last section here is around best practices and enhancements. And actually, before we go into that, I will say, obviously, there's a lot more features that we've introduced in 6.0 and 6.1 that address the use cases that you guys need. Obviously, there's release notes and there's details on those different features. These are some pretty big features. There's a lot of other new features that you guys can leverage. Of course, we want to get you excited to use these features, but we also understand that upgrading can be difficult and upgrading can be worrisome. So this next section, we'll talk about some of the best practices that you can use to hopefully build your confidence into with upgrading and taking advantage of these new features. So let's get into that. So there's been a lot of enhancements over many different releases around upgrading. So in the latest ones, we're able to do auto firmware update for APIC, and as well as the faster APIC data conversion. So we're continuously introducing more enhancement features. Actually, I realize I don't have 6.1 on here, but all of these are to optimize the upgrade time and really provide you more visibility and optimize everything. So in 6.02, we introduced a 64-bit image for the switches. So you will now see there's a 32-bit image as well as a 64-bit image. The 64-bit image is for larger devices. So the devices, like the newer platforms that have more than at least 24 gigs of RAM or more, they'll end up using this image. And the 32-bit we do still support. What you will need to do though when you get these images, you have to get both of them. So you'll have to get both if you have these two different types of switches, and best practice is just to download both these images, upload them to APIC, and APIC will do the selection of the correct image for you. So you don't have to know exactly which one you need, but you do need to put both of those in the APIC. With various releases, there may be behavior changes. So we have introduced this behavior change document. This is built with CX, between CX and the BU. And this is to make you aware of if there's any behavior changes. So it's important to review this before the upgrade so you're not shocked when there's a different flow or a different behavior that you're not familiar with. So we'll go through some of these different things that we recommend that you go through so you're fully prepared when doing an upgrade. So I noted at the beginning of the session that there's a recommended software release. So for each, in each release train, there's a recommended release. So look at installing that one and understand the different different parts of that release. So why actually are you upgrading? Is it to address some defects or is it to add additional features? But look into those the release notes specific to the release that you're looking at installing. If there's various caveats that we found during testing, those will be noted in there. So we also have an upgrade downgrade support matrix. So this will provide you with information on whether you can do a direct upgrade or if you have to do multiple upgrades. So you can put in the release that you are moving from and the release that you want to move to, and it will tell you if there's multiple upgrades that are needed or if you can go direct. Previously, we'd heard a lot of customers running into upgrade issues, and with the upgrade enhancements that we've done, as well as a lot of the documentation, we've been really reducing those upgrade issues and making it smoother and more trustworthy for you guys to do an upgrade. So we have this upgrade downgrade guide that gives you a lot of details into the actual upgrade process. As you guys may have ran into before doing an upgrade, there might be a CIMC upgrade that's required. This is specific to the UCS that is running APIC. That's part of that APIC node. And some of these versions aren't compatible with certain APIC versions. So you'll want to look at that first and actually do the upgrade outside of doing your APIC or your cluster upgrade. And you can do these one at a time to make sure that your cluster everything is still working properly and you have that up and running. So address this first. So there's many people have probably heard this concept. The ACI fabric actually being similar to like a modular switch. So with the modular switch, we have our chassis, we have our lines cards, we have our fabric models. Well, the APIC or the ACI environment can be seen just as that. Our APIC is our supervisor, and the leaves are the line cards, and the spines are fabric cards that bridge this all together. So if you lose connectivity on a certain module, you'll end up losing all that connectivity, right? So redundancy obviously is very important. We want to have a redundant network. So when you're looking at designing as well as upgrading your fabric, think about that. So you could put switches in different groups, so you have keep that redundancy. So we also have something that's called a pre-upgrade analysis. We have multiple ways of doing this. We have the Cisco APIC Upgrade Validator. This includes various checks. It's dependent on what version you're currently on. So there may not be some checks. Well, there'll be less checks on the earlier releases, but with each upgrade, when you do another check, there's more checks that we do, but that is one option. We also have an option through Nexus Dashboard. There's a firmware upgrade analysis. This does additional checks that may be within APIC. And then after you do an actual upgrade, there's a post-upgrade analysis. So that'll show you the difference between your pre-upgrade and your post-upgrade. And with this, if there's any items that become that end up becoming lost or changed, then we'll provide that. Nexus Dashboard will provide that information. So this is around more operational items such as your interface up, down, your node and device health, routes, and neighbors. And this helps you identify if there are any problems on post upgrade. There's also a post upgrade check script. This is the most up to date and highly suggested to use. It's a managed pre-upgrade check script that the BU and CX put together, and they update this often with every single release. It's a Python script that you can run in APIC. It's available on GitHub. And so whenever there's something new that's introduced that may impact a customer's network, then TAC adds a new check to this script. We're actually looking at bringing this into Nexus Dashboard, but that hasn't happened yet. All right, so I do have a closing poll. If you guys can do that. So hopefully with this information, you guys got a little taste of some of the new features. Some features may not be important to you. Some features may be very important to you based on your use cases. But we really want you to understand the upgrade process and be comfortable with it to take advantage of these new features that we have introduced into these releases. I'm actually going to stop sharing real quick. I do want to show one more thing. Just make sure I'm logged in. All right. Are there any questions, or Joey, was there anything that you might want to cover that I didn't?
Oh yeah, actually, we have a few questions in the chat. We can go through it.
Right.
Does the upgrade analysis detect down fabric ports? We had a situation when one node was not connected to some and the upgrade to down services. This is a question from Terrell. Yes, we actually implemented something within the script to be able to check if there are fabric ports with a link down state. The check actually just checks the faults that are present because we do raise a fault in the APIC for fabric port link down after a port's been connected, and then if that port goes from in use to down. So that is something that we did implement. It should be in the latest version of the GitHub script if you want to go check it out. And always, if for some reason it's either not present or not working as expected, then please open a Git issue with us and we'll resolve that one. Let's see, from what I've seen in the ACI pre-upgrade validation, it says you should run it after the APICs are upgraded. Since it's a Python script run from the CLI, there would not be a prompt once the upgrade is complete. So we just want to clear that up. Yes, Austin, that's actually a new thing that we discovered. So there are, I would say 99% of the checks that we run are things we want to check before you upgrade. We actually discovered an issue where after the APIC cluster was upgrading, there was a convergence problem with databases. It's a combination of a couple things. It's not something that we've seen a lot, but it's something that we wanted to check for. So since this only happens after the APIC's upgraded, we added a new check for if you run it after the APIC cluster is upgraded, it will actually go and revalidate if you are impacted by that. So yes, the current recommendation is actually to run it before the upgrade, resolve all your issues that it may show, and then after the APIC completes the upgrade, rerun that. And that is actually based on the version that you're upgrading from and to. We have some logic to say these combinations of software, meaning I'm going from this to this, are susceptible to a known issue. And if that is the case, we have a banner to prompt you to rerun it after the APICs are upgraded. We hope that that is not the case going forward and that this is a one-off issue, but nonetheless, that's the recommendation. Yeah. Okay. And I think there's a couple other recommendations regarding the script. We can definitely take those offline and make sure that we get that feedback implemented. There's a question from Alejandro. What is the post-upgrade analysis? So within Nexus Dashboard, we have a feature to do a pre-upgrade and a post-upgrade analysis, but it's not necessarily what our script does for best practices and bug verification. It does have some of that logic, but the biggest use case is more of a state checker. So checking, I have X number of endpoints before I upgraded, and I have X number after I upgraded. And same thing with interfaces being up and routing and things like that. So it's a way for us to validate the state of the fabric before and after the upgrade, to make sure that we have, no discrepancies in all of the learning and control plane and data plane that was seen before and after. And Terrell, unfortunately, no, we cannot. The real problem is not the fact that the APIC isn't virtualized with when it comes to 9000V. The real problem is actually that we don't have a version of the 9000V that can run ACI code. That is something that's on I shouldn't say the roadmap, it's on the radar for product management. But as of today, if you wanted to simulate an ACI environment, whether that's for automation testing or whether that's for hands-on practice, then it's still recommended to use the simulator.
All right, so there is another poll, there is a survey that has been opened up. I'm not sure, you guys are.
Yeah, I opened it. Clarissa, I fired it off.
Okay, I was trying to share, just trying to share the polls, but yeah, if you can complete that survey, let us know. Let us know how you enjoyed this session, if you have some recommendations for future sessions. Looks like a lot of people are running 5.2.x. Not very surprised by that. I would have hoped more folks on 5.3. Interesting, we don't have anyone 6.0, but the recommended release just came out on that. We were a little behind on that one. Going back to this. And then do a quick look at this while you guys complete that survey. So the majority is to prevent EOL. Makes sense. I can understand a lot of people with that. Surprisingly, not as many add new features, more PCERT fixes or defects. We certainly create these features so you guys can leverage them based on the use cases that you guys let us know. But perhaps we're not targeting the right features. So if you guys have features that you would like us to implement, certainly talk with your account manager, and we can look at seeing how many customers are interested in that, how we can implement that, so you guys can take advantage of those.
I think this is good though, right? I mean, I don't want to maybe go as far as to say that ACI is a mature product. I guess it's sentimental for me. I've worked on it since the beginning, and you know it's 10 years old now, which is good. We've done a lot to mature the product and fix things, and the amount of features. I think the feature velocity maybe has slowed due to it, but I like how the common theme is defects, stability, end of life. I mean, those are all things that we do try and focus on, and going forward will definitely be focal areas for us as well. So.
Well, thank you everyone for attending the session. Let us know if there's other session topics that you'd like us to focus on. And thank you for your time.